So, all right, recording is started, and we're ready to begin the weekly RCC podcast. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I am Mr. Poppy. No jokes today. I know, Mister, you're disappointed. I didn't do a joke for you because you were late to the last podcast. You know, if you really need a joke that bad, just open up your portfolio. Oh, yeah, it's okay.
Too soon.
Or open mind. Yeah, ask me how much Ethereum I bought recently. So joining me today is Mr. Jared and the big man Oz, or Ollie, depending on where you're at. So, gents, let's kick it off as we always do. We talk just a little bit about the macro, a little bit about Bitcoin, Ethereum. Probably don't want to get too bogged down in that because honestly, not much has changed other than last week after the podcast, the CPI report came out. And as we talked about, you know, if the numbers looked like they were going down, the market probably was going to hold steady. But the numbers rose a little bit, and all markets, everything bled. I think J Powell should be proud of himself. The Fed, U.S. Fed. I think markets lost over $1 trillion in the past week. So, yeah, what are you guys' thoughts? Pretty bumpy week, and tomorrow's the big day, the FOMC, when they announce if we're going to get a 75 BP hike or 100, or that small chance of a 50. But yeah, what are your thoughts, gents?
Well, you know, for me, I think the markets reacted a bit irrationally, right? Because I think the majority of the market moves were based on the fact that the expected print was that the print came out worse than expected, right? There was that 0.1% that they were looking for to be cooling off, but you know what we did actually see was a sequential decline, right? A month on month cooling in inflation. And I think that's something that should have been focused on more, right? Because sure, the expectation was for a certain number and that we came in a little hotter than that certain number. But overall, month on month, we are seeing a bit of cooling inflation. So I'm a bit disappointed in the market's reaction and the price action that we saw. I'm sure I'm not alone in that, but hopefully the Fed, hopefully Jerome and co are looking at things a little bit more rationally, right? Because we did see a month-on-month cool off.
I'm as usual ultra bear. I mean, it's call it like I see it. And every big CEO or industry, like from what they're coming out, they're saying like, yeah, get ready for really rough times. And the big institutions, you know, the places that have managed more wealth than we could ever imagine are saying the same things. They're coming out and saying like the future looks dark economically. I know it sucks to like point that out, but I mean, like, we can't control it, but the more we kind of see the way things are going, the more we can prepare for it. And even in these bad economic times are opportunities, to rebuild and reinvigorate things in different ways, and to change the old ways things were being done, that kind of got us to this position. So it's not something, it's like, okay, we'll just take it like I would prepare for a different kind of future.
True. Yeah, after the 2008 financial crisis, we did see a lot of governments issue a lot of new kinds of laws and regulations to protect consumers. Maybe not perfect, but we did see changes. And I think this time around, you're going to see more changes, more lessons learned by the government, and hopefully eventually J Powell retiring and never, ever.
Well, I don't think that'll be the case so much. Like, the government's, in my opinion, never going to learn. Like, just get away, go away. That's what they need to learn to do, in my opinion. And but like the reason we have what we have right now is because of the kind of quote unquote solutions that were implemented in 2008. And people are like, okay, yeah, this is just a band-aid and we're gonna have to deal with this someday, and it's yada yada yada. Yeah, the state keeps doing the same stupid thing, and eventually the house of cards will come down, and that's the opportunity.
I mean,
Yes.
there's a chance it's less about incompetence and more just about pure greed, right? Protecting the status
Well, no, there's
quo and the
absolutely
smoke
that
that.
aspect of it, and like I've said before, like it's an impossible. They cannot fix this problem. Like their quote unquote influence is the problem. You know.
Mhm.
It's definitely my problem because my port is down. J Powell needs to calm down, man. I'm gonna send him a letter. But if the market keeps going this way, here's a positive. I might actually be able to afford a full ETH node. I just need it to drop like another 1,000. That'd be nice.
Pretty good target.
Right? that would be a heck of a discount. Oh my gosh.
You're not the only one I've heard say that. That is like the silver lining. I've heard a lot of people share.
Yeah. The number of people, the number of holders that have 32 ETH or more has been rising steadily. So there, like you said, there's a silver lining in all of this. And if you really truly believe that Ethereum has a lot of promise in the future, and I think the case can be made that it is more and more coming up in certain circles as potentially being considered a commodity alongside Bitcoin. And if that happens and Ethereum can continue to grow and branch out into more traditional markets and services, owning an ETH node might be pretty darn nice. So let's I don't think we have too much more to say. Honestly, the only thing I would actually mention, I don't know if you guys noticed, but we did see a little bit of a bump in Bitcoin market dominance, and along with the Ethereum drop in price. And actually, here's my thought on why Ethereum's dropping. Besides the macro, everything is responding to the macro, of course, but I think there's an additional layer of sell-off, and I suspect it's coming from the Ethereum miners who presumably still have a stockpile of Ethereum. I'm sure there's some other elements, sell the news kind of event, but I would strongly suspect miners are also a big part of that selling pressure, which over time will be kind of nice because under the proof of stake model, I believe there would be less overall selling pressure on the market.
Let's see. Well, you're going to get okay. So the stakers are going to get paid in Ethereum, and we don't know what kind of what the release or what the payout schedule is going to look like yet, from my understanding. And so there will be some sell pressure to pay for operations. Just the staking operation itself and things like that.
Yeah. Once we should pull together some more data, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that in a future episode. But it would be interesting to see how that will evolve. But historically, miners are a big element in Bitcoin and formerly Ethereum for sell pressure at different points in the market. So here's the first topic for today that isn't Bitcoin and macro and ETH. Did you guys see the news that Do Kwon, so I think we maybe covered, I'm not sure if we did. South Korea was considering putting out an Interpol Red Notice, which is effectively an international warrant for arrest. Like, find this guy and extradite him, send him back to whoever put out that Red Notice. Do Kwon, same day that news broke that they were considering that, said, "Hey, I'm not on the run. I'm fully cooperating with everyone, and I'm definitely not telling anyone where I'm at." He actually put something up there. He's like, "My GPS location is not your business," or something like that. So what do you guys think? Is he on his way to a remote island with millions in Luna on his ledger?
It is going to be an interesting case of someone evading this kind of situation. I think in a long enough timeline, like, he gets pulled in and he has to answer for his things in some way, shape, and form.
Wait, so was the Red Notice? I think it's really interesting. Like, first of all, just the fact that we're talking about a Red Notice related to the crypto space. Like, I never thought that we'd be here because I'm familiar with the term, but only because like movies, like spy movies and stuff. Man, how far have we come as a space? If that's any kind of indication. But
yeah, not the kind of direction I was hoping we would go.
Sure, right? Completely agree. So did they issue the red notice?
So I haven't seen a
that
confirmation of it. I heard rumors, but it could be blown out of proportion. But even so, there's definitely something fishy going on. My thought was, hey, I wonder if he could get away with getting to a country with no extradition treaties related to whatever his potential crimes are. There are countries like that, and the only kind of extradition treaties in some countries might be like really serious stuff like terrorism, right? But other than that, you might just be stuck in that country and have a really hard time getting out, but maybe you're not going to be in jail in South Korea. I don't know. I mean, we're obviously speculating, but I wouldn't put it beyond him. I feel like if he was going to really just face this head on, if he was going to accept the blame, he would be a little more open and transparent probably about it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, why would anyone believe anything that comes out of this guy's face? I'm not on the run. It's like, yeah,
well,
let's look at your track record of honesty.
He does have his defenders, though. I've definitely had a few people call me out on social media before in the past week or two.
Sure, but he's yeah.
So I won't disagree. He probably towards the end he probably tried his best, but I also think there's some really fishy stuff. I mean, there's definitely possibly some funds missing. Also, the whole thing kind of reeked of like a giga Ponzi at the end. I mean,
it was overt, like, and this is just ubiquitous. We see this over and over again. People just renting and repeating a Ponzi, and somehow people in the market keep hopping into it. And I'm like, hey, you deserve what you get if people wouldn't buy these projects, if they would hold them to higher standards, we wouldn't have these problems. And now it's being used as an excuse to bring regulators in and have some responsibility, everyone. If you threw in on this stuff, you're part of the reason it's coming for us.
Yeah, but going back to kind of like, is he on the run? Is he on the run with all those tokens on his ledger? I won't say one way or the other, but I do think that, especially after watching that interview that he did with Coinage, I don't know how you pronounce it, but he is still very much of the position that he can still do good, right? And he does seem to have plans of his next project or whatever, right? So in that, viewing it through that lens, I would imagine that he's not going to turn himself in, and even if he is cooperating, that may not be the kind of cooperation that any of the authorities are looking for. Maybe trying to cooperate through his lawyers or remotely or what have you. But he does seem to want to keep on doing something, right? Keep on building. So if he's going to keep on building, he's going to not have to be behind bars. So yeah, that's my thesis on whether Do Kwon is on the run or not.
I don't know why anyone would give him any money. Like, at the very least, demand like someone else take over the project. It's like, no, yeah, you have a reputation now, and it's absolute trash failure.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time someone in this space failed and people continue to invest in them, or that they did something terrible, right?
It's like I give the government a hard time for messing up crypto, but that's also the market owns its own responsibility too and accountability, and people quit funding these projects.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many examples of this. I mean, I guess we don't really have to get into them now, but one of my thoughts is like sometimes it depends too, and if the individual bows out, if they distance themselves, like if Do Kwon came in and said, "Hey, look, I messed up. I alone am going to take responsibility and I'm going to step away. Luna has nothing to do with me, going forward. I'm not part of the foundation and they're going to do what they do." And then they tried to launch the second token. I think that would have landed a lot differently than, like weeks after nuking the entire crypto market and destroying a top 5 protocol, launching a second token. And I'm pretty sure even the original token probably has more market cap than the second one at this point, but
it's ridiculous.
There was definitely a better way to do this. Maybe this is something that a lot of crypto market personalities, leaders are lacking in, which is understanding the nuances of like public relations. Because you see this so many different ways, so many different times, so many projects where they just stick their foot in their mouth. And I mean, we could rattle off so many examples, but yeah. So,
Yeah, well,
Oh, I,
we've talked about this before, but I think Jared said something that I I I don't take as as an aggressive an approach because I am sympathetic. I think it's horrible to see folks get destroyed, right, in terms of their wealth. But um, I think it all does kind of it is a bit owed to the toxic, when Lambo culture that seems to have developed, and hey, maybe I am the boomer, maybe maybe that's just me being too old, but that mentality of quick gains is what reinforces folks to go into these projects that tend to offer get rich quick opportunities, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah.
think maybe that's something that, hey, maybe that's something that's why we talked about it before. That is toxic. That they're really, you have to be super lucky or know the right people in order to be able to get those kinds of gains, especially get those kinds of gains sustainably long term, right? So, the faster we can move away as a space from when Lambo, I think the better. And maybe kind of that's a shout out to all the influencers out there, right? Our favorite influencer, Mr. Tom Crown, isn't part of that narrative, I think, in my opinion, but
No, I.
plenty
Oh, sorry.
still
Go ahead.
are, right?
No, I
No,
absolutely agree. Like the win Lambo, like get grit quick, yada yada yada. That's a God. There's a problem around that, and we kind of there's a temptation to embrace that. It's a deal with the devil kind of thing, and I yes, we need to address that and have some conversations about that. There's also, to me, the coming deal with the devil is going to be: do you embrace regulation or do you resist it? Like, to me, the only metric that matters for crypto is regulation resistance, like explicitly. You know,
so then what's
but
your thoughts on proof of stake for Ethereum?
in terms of like regulation resistance,
Yeah, because with proof of stake, right? I think there's a stat out there that says like the overwhelming majority of nodes are operated by two entities, two wallets, right? And
well,
that's
that's
extreme
something.
that's extreme centralization, and that's an attack vector for
Well, okay.
regulators.
Now, fair. That is centralization in one way that comes with other trade offs and benefits, and it's what happens. What can happen if how much can that actually like take effect? Like, how could they actually run and control the chain server? How quick can people, if they see the attack coming, mitigate against that? Like, one of the big criticisms I see about proof of stake all the time, and it doesn't make any sense to me, is where people are like, well, anyone can just come in and buy up your chain. It's if you have on-chain governance or something like that, and then just they can buy up all the token, and then they can run your chain and say what it does. It's like, good. You turn that into a judo technique. You let them jack the price of your coin up, because if someone's going to buy a controlling like portion of your coin, they're going to rocket your price. It's instant moon. It's like, cool. You take the payoff, you fork the project, and you keep your people. Okay, so now you have the code, the people, and a whole bunch of money, and they get previous branding potentially. You know, so I don't think proof of stake is like it exposes itself to more, or it's less regulation resistant necessarily. And I'm very much of the like humble approach of like intellectual humility here. We don't know what the best model is in the long run. This is still an experiment.
yeah, it's true. I mean, there's definitely trade
Yeah.
offs both ways, right? If your vision is to build a global network, there's going to have to be, given current technology, some sort of compromise, whether it's layer twos that are more centralized, or for example, switching to proof of work to reduce the energy consumption. I mean, if you could imagine, I wonder what Bitcoin's energy consumption would be if it was handling the volume that some of the other chains do. Um, Probably would change the game a little bit, right?
I think anytime like the energy consumption question comes up, it's got to be like a compared to what, and
Mm-hmm.
the way like the fact that the state controls the fiat issuance and things like that comes with so much malinvestment, and malinvestment equals economic destruction, essentially resources getting wasted. Um, And so
Misallocation of capital and all that.
absolutely ridiculous misallocation, which it kills me when there's like environmentalist language around this stuff of like clean, green, things like that. It's like no, like that's all just political branding. It's energy efficient, and economical. Economical means, implicitly more energy efficient, in itself. Like this other stuff is just it's branding and propaganda, you know.
Yeah, and to that point on efficient allocation of resources, right? That there is a case to be made. I saw this recently where somebody was bolstering proof of work because that is a more efficient allocation of it does more efficiently allocate resources that are not just financial economic resources, right?
Well, compared
But
to the
you
state,
also
it
make a good point as
absolutely
far as like
does.
yeah, and then power consumption being relative. I don't know if this graphic is true, but I saw this graphic on crypto Twitter, and it was comparing the energy consumption of various things, and especially global banking systems. But what I thought was funny was it was it Bitcoin or was it proof of work Ethereum? I can't remember. Um, Consumed less energy than tumble
Oh,
dryers.
I heard
Like,
that.
think about
Yeah,
that for a second. Yeah,
and
right? Like, it costs more energy to dry your socks than it does to mine these various tokens or coins, right?
I'll tell you
So,
this.
yeah, it is relative.
I will give people half a bit of attention when it comes to like measuring carbon or some other kind of pollutant when they start measuring the carbon footprint of more politicians and regulations. It's always one particular thing that's measured, but not their proposed solutions.
Right. Or let's, compare it to Taylor Swift's carbon footprint with her private jet.
Well, no, I want to see the regulators. When you start hiring more people in the government, when you start passing more laws that you don't know the downstream consequences of, and this and that, let's start. How about we start measuring that stuff, and then we can go from there.
Deal.
Yeah. So, did you guys hear? Speaking of energy consumption in Ethereum, a project is claiming to be the very first on-chain NFT for Ethereum's proof of stake chain. This is a project called Posers. It kind of reminds me of I think pixel art version of Doodles a little bit. I just think it's interesting. We saw a lot of talk and more last year when the hype was bigger of historic NFTs and collecting historic NFTs. And that this being the first on-chain, as they claim. I know there's actually some debate about whether that's true, and we're not going to really getting into that here, unless you guys have some thoughts on it. But I am curious, historic NFTs, old NFTs, do you think that, because these are things, registered on blockchains, different blockchains, we're not just talking Ethereum, but some of its predecessors. Do you guys think there's more value to historic NFTs, kind of like historically significant artwork?
Interesting. Okay, so like the first, from my understanding, I guess NFT kind of thing you could think of one of them was CryptoKitties, right? Is that like the go-to early project everyone's familiar with?
That's one of them. I think the ones that have held up the strongest, although they're not the original, but they are definitely an old one, is CryptoPunks.
CryptoPunk, yeah, yep. Well, okay. Well, I mean, I guess we can look at the history of CryptoKitties. Where are they at now? And that doesn't mean that like in the next 10 years or 20 years, they're not going to blow up in some way, shape, or form, or possibly, but where are they at now? And actually something cool you could do, a future project, is they could say, okay, we're going to airdrop to everyone that has a CryptoKitty, in 6 months or something like that. You go out, you buy up a bunch of cheap CryptoKitties or some old historic project, and then you launch your drop, you airdrop yours, or you whitelist based on who's holding that or something like that. There's all kinds of cool things you can do with blockchain.
Yeah, it's very common actually. When you get a popular project, even if it's not a historic one, you often get airdropped a lot of stuff, although I would say 70, 80, 90% of it's a scam and don't click on it. But that is a pretty common thing. People will drop like tickets to a mint in the form of an NFT, or some really clever ways of doing that.
Yeah, well,
I think it's like everything else that's owed. Sorry. I think
No,
it's
go
like
ahead.
everything else that's old, like wine and art. Just because it's old doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but it definitely does help. CryptoPunks, it's old, but then it does also have a lot of other factors that also like kind of dictates its price. So I feel like it's one of the factors you can gauge, but it's not the sole reason, because then you also have to look at like CryptoKitties. Why are they so low? They're older. They're one of the oldest. It's one of the most known. So I don't think just because it's necessarily old mean it's good, but it definitely does help.
Well, and okay, the value I would try to, if I were doing something around this, to get out of CryptoKitties is that, okay, that's a meme that's going to be in someone's head who's probably an OG if they're around in that time, who probably has more crypto compared to other people, who knows more OGs. They've been in the community longer. Like those are the kind of factors I'm going to take into account. Like if I were marketing a project or planning a project and looking for an old project to kind of get this, like, I don't know, just kind of like beat my competition and, build up a good community really quick or something like that. Those are the ways that if I'm looking at an old project, I'm thinking I'm dealing with more established people, even whether they own a CryptoKitty or not. Just the fact that they know that they exist compared to others says to me certain things about them in probability.
That's a good point. It's like a social gauge. You can kind of
Mhm.
use it to decide how much people really know or even how much value they hold.
Yep. Yep. And here's, hey, let me ask you this question. Find a bunch of people that have, like, well, I don't know, what's a new like NFT project that's kind of out there in Ethereum right now, just a ubiquitous one, Pixel Punks or
I don't
Goblins.
okay,
It would be.
Yeah,
Goblins,
I was
cool.
gonna say
All right,
goblins.
let's compare like
I'm just
who.
channeling my pappy over here.
There we go. Let's compare. Let's pull all the people that hold goblins, and then all the people that hold currently CryptoKitties, or maybe even, yeah, let's just say like people that hold CryptoKitties compared to people that hold goblins. How many steps of removal are there between those people that hold those projects that know Vitalik or core devs? And which ones do you think are more likely to? My money is on the people holding CryptoKitties, that there are fewer social steps before you get to like the more influential circles.
Yeah, there's an element of
That's an
that.
interesting
Kind of
thesis.
checks out.
I mean, when you look at,
What I think is,
yeah, go ahead, Mister.
well, I was just going to say, when I look at it from old is one thing, but like, quote unquote, historically significant NFTs, that just kind of harkens back to the days of like Jack Dorsey's tweet, right? Minting an NFT on his tweet. And that certainly had a lot of, got a lot of traction actually, for whatever reason you want to ascribe to that. But I think the fundamental difference here is like that was minting a picture of his tweet and not the actual tweet itself. But if you can
Mhm.
mint inside the first block of proof of stake after the merge, I think there is historical value there because you essentially have an ownership position that lives inside the first block, right? And that's huge. It's you can't ever own anything inside the first block of Ethereum,
Yeah,
period, anymore. But hey,
yeah.
it's kind of a new chain now, right?
Mhm.
And
Well,
there's
That's
it's the
something to be
true.
said
selling
for that.
point.
Like there was this. Did you guys hear about this project that where they minted the NFT in the last block of proof of work right before the merge, where they bought out all they paid so much for gas that they bought up all the space in that block and owned that block, and that block
Interesting.
now has NFTs tied to it. Like that's cool to me,
That does
from
sound
just
pretty
kind of
neat.
like a tech perspective and just kind of like having an NFT that is inside that block, the last block and then the first block.
Yeah. That's a flex. That's a nice flex. I like it.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's more of a
Yeah.
flex than the tweet, in my opinion.
Well, and I don't know if you guys knew this. I mean, most of you probably do, but Bitcoin had NFTs before Ethereum, and some of the very famous ones, like I think it's like Rare Pepes are one of them.
I
But
know the guy who invented the whole Rare Pepe's project.
nice.
It's funny. Yeah.
OG alert! OG alert!
No, like I've slept on his couch. Like I knew this guy way back
What?
when, like way
It's
before.
crazy.
Yeah, it's
That's
so
cool.
funny. It's so trippy to me that like we're talking about rare pepes here because I remember when he was into something called Hunter Coin. If I bet you guys have no idea what that was, and then like he was just all about crypto, and then he came up with this rare pepes project, and I'm like, yep, have fun with that. And sure enough, it was genius for him.
Very cool. Kind of on the same topic, the Museum of Modern Art is selling $70 million of it out of its collection to fund quote unquote digital initiatives. And some people are thinking that means they may actually pick up some NFTs. That would be pretty wild. We're talking that the art that they're selling includes Picasso. I'm not sure if I'm saying it wrong, but Bacon, Rousseau, Renoir. These are going to be auctioned off and they're going to expand their digital presence. I think even if it's not, say, a direct purchase of NFTs, I have to believe that the NFT, we'll call it the NFT revolution, because in terms of digital art, it really is revolutionary. How many people it brought in to even be remotely interested in art. 99% of those people that have bought, say, a PFP or some other NFT, I guarantee you that they would have never bought art in any other form, probably in the rest of their life. Maybe they'll pick up some posters for their wall or something at their living room. But this has really introduced people to the world of digital art in a whole new way. And I think that must have played some factor too in organizations like Museum of Modern Art to decide it needs to invest in digital art now, or at least invest in more digital art.
Yeah, I think it's
It's
really
funny you
cool
say
that they
that.
are, no,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
mister.
Go ahead.
All right. What? It's funny you talk about MoMA because I actually went to the one in Barcelona fairly recently on my holidays, and I saw their Beeple collection, and they had a few other NFTs, and they've actually been building up their NFT collection for a while. But because I'm kind of interested in working with art galleries and helping them implement these stuff, I had to look into who actually owns these NFTs, and a lot of the time, MoMA and the other art galleries, they don't actually own the NFTs; they just loan them. So I actually interacted recently with the person that owns Beeple, simply because I pointed out the fact that MoMA didn't own them in the Barcelona department. But I think it is fairly likely that they will be buying or at least borrowing more NFTs because if you look at I think they have an exhibition in the Netherlands as well. So they have New York, the Netherlands, and Barcelona, and two of those already have a fairly big digital art and an interactive art space. So it's fairly likely that they will be buying some NFTs, which is kind of cool. And they always go for the high profile ones as well, which is, another cool thing.
Well, maybe
Yeah,
they
how
want to
cool
buy
is
my
it that,
bags.
there you go, maybe some goblins, right? Like, I think it's super cool that they're valuing this emerging art technology higher than they are their Picassos and their Renoirs, right? I think that's a major shift in mindset, because this is coming from a museum, right? They're kind of the cultural gatekeepers and the maintainers of these culturally significant pieces of art, and to say that they'd rather give up a Picasso to get an NFT, maybe, from Banksy or something. I think that's amazing.
It's
Talk about
That is
interesting.
pretty
adoption.
crazy.
Yeah. I wonder what kind of custody solutions they're implementing if everyone just kind of comes up with it on their own, if they don't, if they take the time to figure out what they're getting into. I'm curious about
Yeah, and
that.
I know somebody that used to be on the risk side for Lloyd's, insurance and stuff in the UK, I believe. So, just knowing what he used to do, I would imagine that they are very secure in their custody solutions, and I would imagine that a lot of that is being driven by their insurers, right?
Interesting. Yeah. I've yet to hear of any kind of insurance uh, agency in the space around these things. Hmm, I don't know
Oh, I'm
what.
talking about MoMA's insurance. Like they for sure
Yeah,
have
it's probably a
like
private deal.
crop insurance, private for
I'm
sure.
willing to bet at the time it's probably a custom solution like them and their lawyers come up with on a case by case basis.
Oh, definitely. This isn't like a cookie cutter thing you can kind of buy off the market. Definitely custom made.
Yeah, you're not putting it into Celsius custody, that's for sure.
It would be
Wah,
like
wah.
I got to see I didn't see the MoMA, but I went to the Web3 gallery in New York last month, and that was just cool. I mean, they have those little art frames because you know you can buy those TVs. I don't know if it's Samsung or who now that has like super high fidelity, like super HD, and so you can and it's low energy use and it's very thin profile. So you mount it on the wall, it looks like a painting, right? And you can put up. You can, of course, you can play animated, you know, streaming video or whatever, but the static images look really clean and crisp, like a real painting or photo. And yeah, the Web3 gallery was cool. I'd love to see more of that in museums. I mean, of course, the classics are classics. I mean, there's something awe-inspiring about seeing some of these great works by some of the most famous artists in history. But to now start seeing digital work in museums is pretty cool. I mean, that's a reflection of our times. Digital everything is the direction we're going. I mean, who would have thought 20 years ago that we'd have even digital cigarettes? I still think that's kind of funny. That's is one of those things I never saw coming. Talking about vaping, by the way. I don't vape,
but I was so confused.
Yeah, I can see. I can see
NFT cigarettes. How does that work?
My language there was not so clear. Yes, vaping. I still get a kick out of it that you're basically using an e-cigarette.
Are you? I feel like you're talking to me with my vape in my hand right now. But
hey, Tom Crown also vapes, so you know, it doesn't have to just be you. Awesome. So our next topic, and then we'll step into some of the things you guys have. I actually think it's funny. We basically talked about this, but I did put a little joke in it. Was Ethereum's merge or Ethereum's dump? Are miners dumping out of spite, or is this transitory selling?
It's because I bought a little bit. I know why. I can settle the I bought a little bit going into it, and it's my fault.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people thinking that. Yeah, just dollar cost average, man. If it goes down far enough, you start working on those 32 ETH for that node.
I was gonna be clever. I'm like, I'll pick a couple up and then dump it on the bump. Yeah, that worked
out. Yeah, well. So you guys have some topics picked out. Why don't we start with? We'll start with Mister. What did you want to cover?
Yeah. So, well, mine's just a little bit more playful than material to any market moves. But the founder of Cardano, Charles Hoskinson, right? He just made a tweet, and there's some buzz around it on crypto Twitter, and now there's some news articles talking about how Charles Hoskinson was throwing shade at Ethereum, right? And then Cardano kind of being kind of positioned as the Ethereum killer or one of the Ethereum killers. I think it's clearly that he's throwing shade, but he called Ethereum the Hotel California of crypto. And for folks that are not familiar with the term Hotel California, it's just this idea of a hotel that you cannot leave, that you cannot escape, right? And he's throwing shade at the fact, Charles Hoskinson is throwing shade at the fact that all the ETH that's staked isn't going to be withdrawable. Nobody can withdraw. Anybody that staked that ETH won't be able to withdraw for quite some time still, even though the merge has happened. His tweet was in response to some folks that I believe were talking about how the Shanghai update, which is the Shanghai upgrade, which is the next major milestone for Ethereum, right? That some folks, I think, especially exchanges, were making it sound like the Shanghai upgrade will be what starts to enable folks to withdraw their ETH. And then you had, Ethereum Foundation developers saying, no, that's actually not true. And in fact, it's not a priority. There are other priorities ahead of making withdraw available. But yeah, no, how funny, like that Hoskinson is using this as a marketing moment. Like, he seems to be really good at that kind of stuff, you know,
Well,
throwing
and I don't.
shade, doing it at the right time.
It is kind of like it's a funny joke kind of thing. Yeah, there is a bit of like a throwing shade factor on it, but it is like it was a gaffe in my opinion, like on Ethereum's part. And to me, I think this is like a divide between the dev attitude and the user attitude. Like devs are looking at it from their perspective and don't necessarily see it from the user's perspective so much. And there's guys like, yeah, what's the big deal? We've got bigger priorities and things to do here. And if I'm a user, I'm like, pardon me, I needed to know this. Like, this is vital information. Why is this not front page? And so I think it was kind of an error on not making sure educationally that people knew what was going on, what they were getting into, or what was happening. And there's an incentive not to share that.
Yeah, there is, but it was just so well timed. I thought it was worth talking about. And then he kind of caps this all off. This part's kind of interesting. Is he through this battle on crypto Twitter. It's like, okay, well, okay, so it's not a priority, but what about all those people that are locked up? And one of the core devs, they were like, well, hey, let's be honest. Like, stakers are wealthy; they have the money to be able to front the capital cost for the hardware, to sit it out and wait for their returns.
Oh my
And
god.
then Hoskinson's like, oh, okay, well, it turns out Cardano stakers are just regular everyday people. they're not the elite out there.
I love it
So
when people have
yeah.
opinions about others' wealth and what they can and should or should not be able to do or to. Oh, good lord, yeah, that's a red flag.
It's weird though, because ETH is normally so good at this. Like you look at their website and it is like very, very nice. They've got one of the best websites and they have beautiful graphics and everything is explained in, a non-technical way. So it's a bit weird that, it's something like this that seems so critical is very, very poorly explained to the point where people don't even understand it until a meme is brought up about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
but
think it was malice. I think it was just oversight and not really like I think engineers get into this like we're doing this really cool thing and then we're solving this technical problem and they don't and understandably like they are dealing with hard problems. They don't pull away and like empathize from like the users or the market person, the person like investing in this stuff from their perspective. Like what experience do I want? What's important to me? What matters to me? Those kinds of things. I think it's just an oversight.
well, and I
Yeah,
also
but at
wonder.
the end of
Yeah,
the
I
day,
guess.
I'd rather have the devs focused on the merge and make sure there's no loss of funds or there's no risk to the ecosystem than for them to worry about when stakers are going to be able to withdraw. So in that way, I kind of understand that priority. But yeah, I think you're right on the money there. There is a divide between user experience and development, and that's not just in Web3. That's not just in crypto. That's across the board, right? All
Oh
devs.
yeah. That's just the divide
That's
between devs and
life.
users. Yeah.
That's life.
It,
Well, and don't overestimate the professionalism and foresight and the hard work that surely everyone in the crypto space puts into everything that they do. You can definitely put a lot on a
Uh,
team, but I think it's worth noting some investors simply just ape into things without thinking about it, and then they might regret it later. You see it quite often.
Well, no, yeah, and like the individual who apes in is accountable for what they do. I'm thinking like as a strategy thing from Ethereum side, it's like get that information out there because it's like people are going to be upset if they have a bad experience, and that affects your branding and stuff like that. Good.
True. I do appreciate that, Mister. You managed to make a Hotel California reference without actually referencing the fact that this was the this was a number one song on the Billboard charts in 1977. It also got Grammy in 1977 for Record of the Year with that single song by the Eagles.
yeah, well,
So the Zoomers out there.
that's my favorite karaoke song, actually.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
realized
If you don't know that
how I
song,
was getting called old.
check it out. It's like extra classic rock, but it's good. It's a good song. I couldn't let that go without saying it. I know. Continue to date ourselves.
My
Hey,
apologies, Oz.
That's
yeah,
even before my time, to be fair. You know this song? Good. I don't know if it translates into the UK. So let me see. Jared, did you had a topic, right?
Yes, it's so Coinbase has released this Coinbase to educate users on policies held by local politicians with new app integration. I don't know if this is literally live or not. That tells you how much I check my Coinbase app, but what they're going to do is, as part of the Coinbase app, you can go in, and this is relevant to the U.S. politics, but unfortunately, what goes on in the U.S. jurisdiction affects the rest of the world. And you can go in there and find out different politicians' take on crypto, and they give them. So now Coinbase funded this organization called CryptoActionNetwork.org. You can go there and get a scorecard of, I don't know if this is everyone in the Senate or just the people they can get enough information on. And so, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, you can head over there, and they basically cut it down really simple. Give them a grade A through F. A is of course good. F is of course bad. And yep. So this is awesome. I'm glad to see this kind of thing because the regulatory environment's heating up. It's got huge implications and consequences for crypto, and as we've predicted, like that voting block is going to grow and grow and grow. And this is just, to me, this is a necessary evolutionary step. I'm very critical of the political stuff, but I'm not like, don't participate. I'm not at that place. So definitely, like, get interested and do what you can. It's low hanging fruit to take care of this stuff. So yeah, that's my contribution. What do you guys think?
I think
I
this
think
is
it's great that I have a reason to open Coinbase again.
See, I will give them credit, man. They're good at app development. The apps look good. NFT marketplace aside, their mobile apps are very clean. Like their DeFi wallet, I really like. I don't use it just because I'm already into MetaMask, which I kind of hate. But I think this is probably one of the biggest developments in the space in a long time. Coinbase really is trying hard to acknowledge the political challenges and I mean, we may have some criticisms of them and they may be fair criticisms, but I think this is a big move. We need to get more engaged. I mean, this is just becoming such a political rodeo, and especially in the US, with a lot of very critical regulation coming later this year, probably. The government's study on crypto across all of its departments is due to be returned to the president. I think it's due like sometime in October or November. And then of course we're going to get through midterms. And for the first time, perhaps ever, crypto is a major political issue that voters are thinking about. It's coming fast. And even if you're young, even if you're not even a voting age, you should really start to familiarize yourself with, who represents you, what their values are, and whether or not those values represent you as a person, or if you'd rather see someone else in there.
Yep.
It's really good to see the space kind of mature in that way, right? To really be able to affect change from a policy perspective by leveraging the power of the crowd, right? And maybe this is kind of like one piece that we needed, is to be able to track politicians' bags, right? To understand where they stand, but also where they stand up with respect to policy, the various policies. Because the thing that I've been looking at since it first launched, was it like late last year or early this year? The former presidential candidate, and I think he's a cabinet member now for the White House, but Andrew Yang, politics aside and whatever you think about Andrew Yang, he launched the Lobby 3 DAO, which is a DAO focused solely on political action, right? Getting into the lobby game, right? Because lobbies are how you influence politics through money and special interest. And for better or worse, that is the system we have. So if we're, as much as we talk about making change in the system or changing the system altogether, at some point you have to start with where we are today. And unfortunately, that is, for better or worse, again, that is the system we have. It's really cool to see that these different pieces are starting to come together, right? You have the Lobby 3 DAO that's able to organize, actions from a group of people with crypto centric ideals. Now you have technology that can really make public politicians' bags and their policy decisions, and maybe it's just a matter of time before all the things that we're complaining about from a regulatory standpoint, before there's critical mass for the community to affect change in a meaningful way. And so
That
that's what I'm
yeah.
hopeful for. I'm optimistic at least.
No, I absolutely agree. And let's say, okay, so we've got this theory, as the crypto block, that we have some ideas about what would be better for society. So let's practice that. Let's live that and show people that we can organize and be more effective and produce more with fewer waste, with less waste. We can organize better and we can create more value for everyone and ourselves, and spend less in the meantime. So we can apply that as a broader crypto community into solving this problem and having a necessary influence on political discourse. So I think this is an opportunity to practice that.
Absolutely.
So, Oz, did you have a topic for this week?
Yeah, sorry, let me just pull it up. So the topic I have for this week is the climate and energy implications of crypto assets in the United States, which is a very long name for the report that Biden ordered, I think it was in July. And one of the key takeaways from this report is that A, it's not worth reading, and B, they did awful due diligence. They cited the same source 15 times, and this source comes from a data scientist from a very anti bank, centralized bank. I think it was the Dutch bank or Belgium central bank, something like that. And he also airs his authority or his commentary as if he is an expert in the space. So yeah, it's not very good. The data is also really patchy. They use mostly statistics from 2017 to 2019, and then they'll use very, very, very patchy and inadequate data from either 2020 or 2022 and try pass it off as all coming from 2022, which is just really disingenuous.
That's shady.
And
That's shady.
yeah, it's bad. And then also one of the recommendations, I think it was like one of their closing recommendations, was that and you're gonna like this one. Where is it? Here it is. So they want to implement a policy that forces miners to introduce net new renewable generation online to be eligible to mine, which is also a policy that's not seen in any other sectors. So to be able to mine, you have to generate your own renewable energy completely independent of the grid. And then I believe you also have to reuse it, which is it's crazy. I mean, no other sector has anything broadly close to that, and to do to try implement that would just be like wholly problematic. So I think it's altogether a really, really bad report and something they've kind of slapped together with people that claim to be crypto experts but are very far from it.
We see that so
It
much
sounds a
in the
lot like
space.
the It sounds a lot like the reports I would do in school when I would put it off till the night before and then I'm rushing and then I only have one source to cite over and over again and then I turn it in the next morning. It's like, were they
Yeah,
procrastinating this whole time? They've had a long time to get this report together.
just all stripped from Wikipedia.
Yeah,
It's
right.
Yeah.
it's weird as well because there are a lot of like publicated or published reports, sorry, from people within the space. Like people go to great lengths to try produce reports. I've even helped in producing reports. Like Web3 is one of the areas, and specifically digital technology is an area where everybody likes to peer review and publish. It's crazy. Everybody likes their work to be seen, and yet they go to some of the most obscure sources to find the data. It's not really good. I don't like it. To
Are
sum
we
it up,
surprised though? Is it that
yeah,
surprising?
it's the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
if they have an agenda, then yeah, they're gonna be lazy about writing it. But we'll see. I mean, there are some critical members in Congress that have voiced support for crypto, and I would hope that there's some lively debate about it in the coming months. That's why I think the end of this year is going to be very spicy. And we're probably going to get hopefully some long-awaited clarification on the regulatory space for crypto, which could be bad, but I'm hoping that it's at least somewhat good. Strap in and make sure you guys
Reasonable.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
Make sure you have the numbers, emails for your elected representatives and let them know how you feel. So we're at the top of the hour, and it is time for some Q&A. So, are you guys ready? First question. I love these questions because there's no right answer really, but is Bitcoin going to 10K to 12K? So one's from Nice Grapefruit 2177. What do you guys think? Are we going to go down there? This is the number the bears have been looking for the past year. I keep seeing that 10, 12K because that's where there was a lot of support, a lot of price volume, a lot of potential liquidity.
So in the last month and a half, I've bought around 20, and knowing and believing, and I'm the classic bear here, that it could go to 5. I have no clue. Like, my expectations in the short term are just, I have no clue what's going to happen. In the long term, I feel totally fine making those purchases, even if I'm, buying at 20 and it goes down to 5 or whatever. Like, I've played this game to not be emotionally wrecked by it. So that's where I'm at. I'm still learning how to read the macro and form an opinion on what I think it will do. Like, I guess my bias, what I kind of expect to see is like the Fed and the central, planners absolutely jack things up, cause hyperinflation, which causes hyper cryptoization. That's the safe bet for me in the long run, but that doesn't mean that's what would happen. These guys have been, the central planners have done an amazing job in a horrible way of kicking the can down the road. So it wouldn't surprise me if they could drag this out for another 10, 20, 30 years, but I mean, I know that this game will come to an end. Like, mathematically, you're not going to break the laws of physics. There will be consequences for this game, for this stuff.
Sure. What do you think, Oz? You're our low time frame day trading degen.
Well, I mean, if Mr. X was here, he'd say it's in his accumulation range as usual. But personally, I'm not sure. I mean, I like to refer back to the Bitcoin and then M2 money supply chart, and we actually just sweeped one of my key levels, and I'm pretty sure it's also a swing failure on the weekly, which is actually really nice to see. I mean, I sold at 1700 and 2K on ETH, and that's really what I've been looking at going into the merge. So for Bitcoin, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm long, but that doesn't really say much because my bias flips, every hour or two.
As it should. Can you explain swing failure? What do you mean by swing failure?
Oh,
What
yeah,
were you
sorry.
expecting and what failed?
So swing failure pattern is where where the price action attempts to take a high or a low, or at least a significant high or a low, and it fails. So it will wick, but it won't close above, and it usually reacts quite significantly. It's not like a small reaction. I think a lot of our lows or on the way down were actually swing failure patterns. I mean, you can type into Google and I think stuff will come up. But yeah, it's essentially where the price action tries to take out a low or a high, and it's fairly significant. There's a lot of money trapped. They sweep up, and it fails to remain above. It's a sweep essentially. It sweeps the liquidity, and then it uses it to project itself down or up, the inverse direction.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that explanation.
What do you think, Mister? You think we're going?
Well, I'm kind of, I think as far as directional, I am liking the bottom is in narrative. just looking at liquidity that we've been seeing, and I'm longer time frame than Oz is. But we've formed really good bases with multiple touches in on Ethereum. We've done similar stuff on Bitcoin. What worries me for Bitcoin, it really is. So here, my macro is I don't think we're going to 10K. All bets are off if we go to a full point rate hike though on Wednesday with the Fed, Jerome Powell.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with that. I don't think we're going to see 10K tomorrow, Wednesday, but we would see a little bit of a breakdown in market structure with 100-point hike. Okay, so the answer is nice grapefruit 2177. No one really knows, but we do know that a lot of bears are very focused on that range, and for good reason. There's a lot of liquidity they probably tap into there, but a lot of folks also think that we're in the accumulation range. We're near or around the bottom, implying probably upper teens. All right, next question from Prudent Delivery 573. How will the market respond to a 75 BP hike? I don't know about you guys. I kind of think it's 90%, well, say 75% priced in. You're always going to have that volatility or the infamous BART pattern. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think it's priced in.
I think 75 bits. Yeah, 75 bits is priced in. I saw some other data that was saying it's there's like something like 30% are pricing in a full 1% rate hike. But I think if we get 75 bits, I think we are flat to pumping.
Yeah, the one thing I've learned is no matter how confident I am in what the Fed is going to do, don't set my heart on it. I have been surprised more than once by Mr. J. Powell. So yeah. I do think you're right.
That's a really great point.
Statistically, though, the professional side of the market, all the big players, most of them are expecting 75 basis point hike. So I always say I'm not going to argue against people that are better funded, better trained, and more experienced than me, even though they are wrong sometimes. But statistically, they're probably right more than I am.
So now I have seen comments out there of someone here and there saying like it could be 75 to 100, and if we hit 100, that they were just saying blood in the streets. Now I have no opinion on that. I don't know. I'm just reporting the hearsay.
Yeah, there definitely be some downside. We've definitely gone to a degree of pricing that in because I think that's what spooked the markets last week. But I really feel like we oversold that event. I mean, there's a lot of signs that inflation's stopping. That doesn't mean that the Fed's going to turn dovish. It just means that they may plateau on their hawkishness for a while. Yeah, it'll be an interesting week. Definitely be safe if you're trading. Have those stop losses in place. Have a plan and strategy because the volatility is going to be big. So the next one is, and this is less of a question, it's just the fact that maybe this is a real song that I've missed somehow, but Babuloseo posted a Crypto Barbie song. Thank you. The lyrics are pretty good. The next real question was from Hookep. Does proof of stake eventually lead to centralization? And we kind of covered this a bit before. I think the definition of centralization can differ, and also I don't think any more than mining, proof of work does either, because you can have large entities dominate the mining of a particular chain, and to me that's really no different than proof of stake having large nodes run say on the same infrastructure or by the same entity. What do you guys think? Is proof of stake just inherently more prone to centralization?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily more prone to it. However, it kind of has turned that way since, you have people like Lido, where, the people that can't afford the 32 ETH requirement. They just pool their money together, and in turn, it means you have hundreds of ETH or even thousands of ETH, sorry, stacked together, running nodes. So it does kind of give the power back to one person. However, I don't think this is really inherently a problem with proof of stake. I think it's more of a problem with the way the Ethereum Foundation, Ethereum set up their proof of stake chain. The 32 ETH limit is fairly high. Obviously, they have their reasons for doing that, and I mean they're fairly logical reasons. However, I think it is kind of the consequences of the actions. When you set a limit that high and people can't afford it, they're going to pull their money together. It's kind of the given route. They still want to support the foundation and the project, but they don't have 32 ETH spare to do it. Because I mean, looking at the prices now, that's close to like 40. Or no, sorry, it's close to like 50K. It's quite a lot of money.
Well, it was like 120K at is my math right? 120K at the top, around 4,000 ETH.
Oh yeah. It's like 120, 130.
Yeah, right.
It's
And I
crazy
wholeheartedly
expensive.
agree with you. I think it's less of a thing about proof of stake and more about just the way Ethereum's proof of stake has been rolled out. For me, it's less about network centralization and more about, as we kind of spoke to a little bit before, it's the edge that you're exposing to regulators, and the centralization there, I think,
Yeah.
does pose some sort of regulatory threat because if you have well, regardless if it's Lido that controls a massive chunk of the nodes or it's Coinbase that does, right? As soon as you have these entities that are controlling validation, right, like processing transactions, all a regulator has to do is put pressure on this super whale, right, that has a lot to lose by not playing friendly with regulators, like a lot of money to lose, to be clear. You just have to apply pressure to that one or two entities, and you get your way. So my concern is, from a centralization standpoint, is less about network security. I think the network is still plenty secure, and more about regulatory risks.
Yeah, I think so. With proof of stake, you're more likely to have smart contracting options, channels of communicating that are easier to parse out on chain. Now, I get if my inner Bitcoiner is like raging in the back of my mind, like, no, you can do everything off chain. You don't need to you can do this, you can do it that way. It's like, yeah, sure. And you're an engineer, and you get that all this technology is out there and these options and things like that. But for regular everyday users, no, not necessarily. And it also takes you guys for freaking ever to come up with something. It's like how is oh gosh, what was the smart contracting project on Bitcoin? Was it Rootstock? One of those Taproot. No, not Taproot, but there's a smart contracting platform like years and years
ago. Taro root or something. Taro.
Nope, it was I forget the name of it, but it's like, yeah, how's that going? And but anyways, back to the point I was making is that I think it's easier to coordinate, in my personal opinion, over a proof of stake chain, just because of the throughput and the things you can do there, and it's actually on and in the chain, and that comes with it, a cost benefit. So to answer the question, like in a nutshell, do I think that proof of stake lends itself necessarily towards more centralization? Personally, no. But that's relative to how I define centralization, and take into account that centralization or decentralization isn't the most important thing to me. Regulation resistance is. And to me, like people being so again, like, sorry, this is getting in like economic theory. The thing that backs a crypto, what gives it value, is other people. And the capacity for those people to coordinate together is part of the value proposition of crypto. And so I think that proof of stake has something to offer there. That could solve a problem that other projects and other methodologies or modalities fail to, because they can't coordinate, or because the coordination is more difficult. Now, again, take that with a grain of salt. You could argue that Bitcoin has a super simple Schelling point proposition And that makes it easier for these people, for everyone interested in it, to coordinate. That's fair. I'm glad that both exist and both are out there. I want more options to solve this problem, not fewer.
This is a lot of good commentary. I love the question part. So we got two more items. One, Lem said, "Homie, Poppy's voice is crazy." I don't even know what to say to that, but glad crazy, I sound crazy. Sexy. Yeah, maybe, or just crazy. Where was it? Here we go. Brantley asked, this is one of my favorite questions. So I'm gonna ask you guys. I'll give you the question. I'm just looking for one specific point because it's easy to go on going for a long time about this. What your number one favorite tip is for someone that is new to crypto? And I'll start, and I'm gonna say it's your mindset. You need to decide, what type of investor or trader are you? Are you the kind of guy that wants, or lady that wants, to invest for a long time and build a portfolio, accumulate, and then sell into the next bull market? Or are you the type of person that wants to try to learn how to trade actively, swing trades, day trades, whatever it might be? You want to learn how to use leverage, margin, and try to make money that way. And these are two very different paths. Now there's some overlap and some skills that are very similar in these two, but I think that's the most fundamental question, because sometimes people simply don't understand the difference. And they might get mixed messages. If you show up onto Reddit or you show up onto the Discord for RCC and you start asking questions, you're going to get answers from both types, and they won't always gel. So really think long and hard about what your goals are. To me, my opinion as someone new to the space, I think you should consider the investment route initially until you get more comfortable with what you're doing. But let's go around and see what everyone else thinks. Oz, what are your thoughts?
Could you repeat the question? Was it the top tip?
Yeah, what's your top tip for someone new to the space?
Oh man, I have so many. Can I give two?
Sure, I'll give you two. You get two.
Great. All right. So the first one is a hardware wallet. No matter how stupid it seems, whether you have $100, $200, $300, as long as it's above $50, buy a hardware wallet. They're like $30, $40 now. They're getting stupidly cheap. Ledger always has sales. As long as it's legit, it sets you up for good habits in the future when you actually have proper money. Because I can promise you, you do not want to have proper money on your hot wallet. I know myself and other people in this school have lost a lot of money from silly mistakes that could have easily been avoided if we were a little bit more sensible with, our hardware wallets or where we stored the money. And it's little stuff like that will haunt you forever and make you regret not getting a hardware wallet. So yeah, I mean, it's cheap and it saves you a headache, gives you ease of mind. You know where your coins are all the time. And then the second one would be, don't use leverage. Even if you think it's necessary to get rich, it's not. Most people that use leverage are already rich. Leverage isn't a tool to get rich. It's a tool to protect your riches. It allows you to, use proper risk management. So yeah, don't use leverage. It's a silly mistake.
Yeah, king advice there. That's gold.
Yeah, good one. All right. How about you, Jared?
Write it down, or you're just screwing around. If you tell yourself that you're taking this seriously and you don't want to be lying to yourself, then write it down. Yeah, it could be as simple as, this is what I want to happen. This is my plan. I'm buying this for this reason, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. I expect it'll do this in this time frame. Watch what happens. Write that down. And then and write down the results. Rinse and repeat. That's the reliable, get better at something. I don't care what it is you're doing.
Nice one. And Mr. What is your tip?
Oh man, I just had somebody come to the door, so I have not been paying attention. But I agree with all these guys. Sorry, I don't have an answer.
No. The question is, what's your top tip for a new trader?
Oh, you know what? For me, and you know what? Like, I love this because it keeps on taking me back to some of our earlier episodes. You know, in the earlier episodes, we were talking about like, hey, how do you find the right project, and how do you trade? And for me, I think the biggest tip would be, yeah, what you said for sure, Pat. As far as like, know if you want to be a like a long term investor, or if you want to be a day trader, because those are two completely different animals. But for me, the best way to start that journey is to really start to just go out there and start hoovering information and understanding what you believe in, right? If you're there to turn a quick buck, then sure, maybe the trading thing is closer to your style. But from a tech perspective, from a project quality perspective, it doesn't matter if you're a long-term investor or a day trader, right? You want to look at things in terms of how, um, what do I believe in terms of the philosophy of a project and what the mission is, what they're trying to accomplish, and do I believe that they can accomplish that, right? Can they
Mm.
execute?
Hmm.
So those are kind of some of the things that I'd be looking to um, learn, right? That's some of the information that I'd be hoovering up to try to understand, to make an informed decision. But PSA, just kind of disclaimer asterisk, right? Nobody knows, right? Do your own research. This is not financial advice. I feel that's always that bears saying.
Can
Yeah,
I
yeah,
add
we do.
something?
Sure.
Uh, do a test transaction and have multiple wallets. Like if you have a wallet for just randomly jumping into NFT projects, like have a wallet that is your hot, quick go-to wallet. That if you are at 3 a.m, you ape into some project that steals all your stuff because you connected to a scam. Make it be like make sure that that's not your main wallet. Okay.
Or how about just don't do it if you're too sleepy or too tired, or
Well,
like if
absolutely.
it's 1 in the morning. If you
I
can't do complex
absolutely.
math,
But if
then
you just
don't
can't
go do a
help it,
trade.
if you know that you're vulnerable to that, because I've heard so many people do it. Just have a wallet that's for your higher risk, and have wallets for your lower risk behavior.
Yes.
And
Yes.
actually, to that point, phishing scams are really prevalent. As long as I've been in this space, as much as we talk about, being careful about the links you click, I found myself just recently almost clicking on a phishing link because I was just like doing multitasking. I might have been shoot, I might have been on this podcast, and an email came through, and I'm like, oh, I got to verify this. Okay, cool. And then
Yep. Yep.
almost clicked it, and then I realized, wait, let me just expand that email field and look at who sent it to me. And sure enough, it wasn't a legit email address that sent it, right? Not from the company, but they pretended to be. So yeah, also be careful of that. Be careful of the links you click.
Yeah, I don't click on any email. Sometimes I get some from like OpenSea or the exchanges. I'll never click on those. I'll go and I'll try and check out my notifications. I don't think I've
Yes.
seen any spoof emails, but you just never know. You really don't want to be that guy or lady that loses your portfolio because you clicked on something. That would be awful.
Don't be a statistic.
Agreed. Agreed. So this has been fun. It's been fun, gents, but it is time to wrap it up. So I don't know if anyone has any parting comments.
I'm gonna miss you guys for the week.
I won't miss you guys. No, I will. I'm lying.
Oh wow.
My only parting comment would be, let's go Wednesday. Let's see what happens. Get your seatbelts ready, and let's all watch it together. How about that?
Yeah. Speaking of, Tom Crown usually does a live stream on these, so I'm not shilling any one channel, but it is fun to get on there. Even if you don't do his, you do another one, watch the live stream and see what Chairman Jay Powell has to say, and be very careful trading. With that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up, everyone. So thank you, and have a good week.
Love you, everybody. 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 Love you, everybody.